In lesson 13E, we are going to talk about reptiles. So, there are a couple of reptiles that you'll probably recognize as we go through these slides, but we're going to talk about where they live, certain characteristics, how they reproduce, so on and so forth. So, one of the things is reptiles can actually go back and forth between living on land and water. Sometimes they live on land, but they are, spend most of their time in the water. And reptiles do breathe air, so they cannot breathe underwater. And they are also ectothermic vertebrates, meaning that they kind of mold themselves to the temperature of their environment. And usually, reptiles are going to be scaly, they're going to have drier skin, which actually helps their bodies to keep in moisture and to make sure that they are not drying out and losing water. So when reptiles are hatched, they actually already have lungs, um, as well as when they are in adulthood. So they're not going to go from gills to lungs, but they are already born with lungs. And they have a heart that has three chambers. Um, and one of the chambers is actually going to be partly divided. And that is just to help with the circulation of blood and carrying oxygen and deoxygenated. They also reproduce by fertilizing their eggs internally and not externally, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So, when we talked about the amphibians, we talked about in the last section that they lay eggs that get fertilized externally. But with reptiles, they actually grow the egg with the baby inside of it already being fertilized inside of the female's body. The egg also has an exterior that's a little bit leathery because this helps them to keep in moisture and from not drying out. And it's also an extra layer of protection from predators to keep them safe until they are hatched so that they can grow into adulthood. There are four groups of reptiles. We have snakes and lizards, alligators, and crocodiles, and we'll talk about what the difference is between them, especially physically. There's turtles, and then there's tuatara, which are basically mainly found in New Zealand. So you won't see that here unless you see them in a zoo or aquarium. So let's talk about the differences between snakes and lizards. One, everybody knows a snake and everyone knows a lizard. Snakes have no legs. They actually have no ear openings and they have immovable eyelids. So they're not really great at seeing things or hearing things. But lizards, they have four legs. They do have ear openings, so they can hear very well, and they have movable eyelids. So both snakes and lizards actually molt, which means they lose their skin periodically as they are growing. Um, and like I said, snakes do not have very well hearing ability, nor can they see very well. But they have other sensitivities that help them be, dominant in their environment. Um, so snakes also have tongues that are sensitive to air molecules, and so they can actually sense different molecules in the air with their tongues. Um, and how that happens is there's an organ that they have on the roof of their mouth that the tongue is pretty much connected to and transports information or stimuli from the environment. This way, they can sense if there's food nearby or if there's danger nearby and be able to either go towards it or away. Um, They can also, snakes and lizards, detect body heat of their prey. So that's one way that they can sense if there's something nearby or not. Um, Vipers and rattlesnakes, they do have an organ that can detect heat very well, and this will help them, like I said, to go towards the prey. They can actually launch themselves against their prey or predators, which is pretty cool, but also very scary. So sometimes you might have seen, documentaries of animals where you've seen snakes literally like leap for a couple of feet, attacking their prey. So be very, very careful when you see a snake or a lizard. Snakes are carnivorous, which means they do eat other animals. A lot of snakes are not actually venomous, they're not poisonous, but some of them do have venom in their teeth. A lot of it can be used medically, but a lot of them can, if they bite you, you can cause some severe damage in humans, and some can lead to death as well. Um, And some of the snakes can actually swallow their prey alive, and then sadly the prey will die while it's being digested in the snake. So, one of the cool things about a snake is how it can eat. So, snakes actually have really cool jaws that are able to open and can actually unhinge themselves. So, they have a double hinge jaw. So, they can literally unhinge itself if it's eating something really big and then come back together once it's swallowed. And usually, the snake will swallow the prey head first because it's just easier to do it that way. So some of the larger snakes will actually like tie themselves or bind themselves around the prey so that they can't move, or they'll use their venom to demobilize the prey, and then they will unhinge their jaw and swallow them whole. Some of the bigger snakes that eat like bigger prey, like a deer or something like that, they will actually eat that and then they will not eat for like a month, which is like really crazy. So, in addition to the two sides of the lower jaw that can unhinge and separate, um, they also have elastic throats, which can stretch really far so that they can just take in the prey no matter what the size is. Okay, so you can actually find a snake in almost every environment because they're very adaptable to different environments such as tropical or cold environments or deserty environments. But lizards, on the other hand, they mainly live in warm and dry places. Lizards can also grow really big, like the Komodo dragon that you see up there in the top picture, or you can have something really tiny like a chameleon. The cute one is Pascal from Tangled, if you've ever seen that movie. And chameleons have a really cool characteristic in which they can blend with their environments so that their skin matches their surroundings. All right, crocodiles and alligators. So these are usually found in very shallow waters, and usually the water should be pretty warm for them. They are usually found in tropical and subtropical climates. That's why you usually, if you watch a movie or something, they are usually in like the Amazon. And they have very large tails to help them move through the water swiftly. They usually move it back and forth, and then it's easy for them to glide and swim. So if you look at the alligator at the top and then the crocodile at the bottom, you can see that there's a lot of obviously similar features, but there's also some different ones. So first of all, similarly, they both have raised nostrils and they have eyes at the top so that they can peek up above the water so that they can watch their prey or just watch for danger. And they also have different snouts. So alligator at the top has a broader and more rounded snout at the end. Crocodiles are more narrow and they have more of a pointy snout at the end as well. And you can also notice that both of them have teeth that stick out on the outside of their lower jaw, which is really, really scary. All right, turtles. Everyone loves turtles, right? So sea turtles obviously live in the ocean, hence the sea, and they have paddle-like legs and arms so that they can use it for swimming, so they can easily glide through the water. Tortoises live on land. They do not live in the ocean, nor do they sink, hence they're super heavy. And then terrapins also live they can either live in the fresh water or they can live near fresh water um, because that's how, naturally that's the environment that they prefer. And then they will also have, turtles actually have claws at the end of their legs, which will help them on sand and when they're walking and things like that. So turtles, their shells are actually hollow. They have their organs inside of, well, not completely hollow. I should say that their shells are not hollow. They do have organs inside of their shells. That's what makes up the actual turtle. Um, but they have two hard shells that are covering their body, one at the top and one at the bottom. They're made up of bony plates that are covered further with larger scales for protection. Um, and some of them actually have their ribs be connected to the shells on the inside. specifically the top shell. And this helps them to be protected from their predators. This helps them to stay safe. So it's a good defense mechanism. And obviously, we all know the mechanism where turtles can pull their heads into their shells and their legs as well, so that they can protect themselves further.